There is so much to learn in Throne and Liberty, whether it's about combat, gear, skills and passives, upgrades, guardians, and so much more. But when I first started this game, I struggled with just learning the basics, but having a complete resource that reviews every detail from start to finish was what I really needed the most. And that's why I went ahead and created this video, explaining everything you need to know in Throne and Liberty to truly play the game right and to be successful. And this game is absolutely huge, and if you feel overwhelmed, that's totally fine. I've been there too. Just use this guide and the timestamps to skip around to whatever information you need to learn and come back whenever you need to learn more. I'll also have more helpful links down in the description as well if you want to check those out later. With that being said, thanks for watching, and let's jump right into the video. Alright, so we can go ahead and get started. In the character select and server select, here you can see one of my level 50 characters. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to go ahead and start a new game. And from there, you'll be able to pick your server. In the drop-down menu, you can pick from different time zones, different locations. Now, if you did pre-order the early access game, you might see some early access servers here. These are typically locked off to just players who play early access. And then your normal or day one access servers just look like these. The green icon is good. Then you have a busy or a full icon. These all look good right now, so I'm just going to pick one and hit select to get started with the main story cinematics. This is a good time to point out that you can skip any of the cinematics or cutscenes in this game for the most part. But that brings us to our character select body type screen. Now, Throne and Liberty does have a very extensive character creator. Lots of customization, lots of details. In most cases, you can start with, a preset option and then just, adjust things from there. If you don't want to get that detailed, you can also go to the designer presets here. I do like these options where you can just kind of click through and see something close to what you're interested in and then just adjust it from there. That's probably going to be a big time saver for you. There's also a randomizer, but obviously that's going to be quite a bit different. Now, some might be curious about this easy face maker. This basically lets you upload a photo into Throne and Liberty, and it's going to do its best to take your face and turn it into a character, basically. So if that's something that you're interested, you can check that out as well. But to save time for the purposes of this video, we'll just take one of the designer presets and then get started. So you'll see that Throne and Liberty drops you immediately into a basic combat tutorial so you can see some action. First thing you'll work on is actually selecting your target. You can use the left mouse button on PC. Typically, I believe it's right stick on console. And then we can do our basic attacks with the right mouse click, and then your basic movement abilities, WASD. Or of course your control sticks on PlayStation or Xbox. So your defensive skill is a pretty big mechanic in Throne and Liberty. This is what we're learning next. And this is also tied to every weapon. Every weapon has its own unique defensive skill that will let you, either parry the attack or maybe outright dodge it completely. Some will heal you. There's just a lot of different effects. And again, it's all dependent on your equipped weapon defensive skill. So now you see we have some abilities that we can actually use, and we'll continue to parry when that purple circle closes down. But I've unlocked quite a few new skills that I can try here. For example, I have my gap closer, a basic combo hit there on my number 1 key. Now the tutorial is going to show you how to weapon swap. Here you can see I swapped a bow, and that's going to let me do some range damage with my basic bow attacks and my bow abilities. So there you go, we got that archer down nice and quick. And we can continue on. The next thing we're learning is the sprint, which in Throne and Liberty is going to actually morph you into a type of animal, whatever type that you have equipped. And then we have kind of a mini boss here where we'll go ahead and use our different skills. Remember, you can weapon swap, so when you're up close, you could swap to that greatsword. If you want a little bit more distance, you could switch to that longbow. And then you can still use your abilities with your cooldown timers, like my number 5 key, my number 6, and so on. At this point in the tutorial, you'll be able to finally give your character a name. Now, this name is going to be exclusive to you across all servers, basically. So if another character is using this name, even if it's on a completely different server from you, you won't be able to use it. Here you'll get a little bit of practice using the map, which is M on the keyboard, your select key for controller. We'll talk more about what you can do at specific locations once we get to the actual world map, which we are going to unlock after the tutorial, which is all the way over here. The next thing you'll do is you'll come out to this open world area, you'll talk to Lottie, and you'll follow her through a few other basic tasks, and this will show you sort of the map marking system, where this purple sort of multi-faceted star, that's going to be your main quest marker, and that'll show up on your map as well. And here we'll get our first chance to actually pick up some weapons and try them out. There's a pretty nice little weapon introduction screen here where you can tab through each weapon and learn a little bit more about each one. We'll go into this obviously a lot more in detail in this video, but this will just give you a quick overview. From here we can go into our main menu and the character info page to go ahead and equip some of those weapon options. So you have the longbow and the greatsword, which you already had equipped. And this is also going to add the sword and shield, the daggers, the crossbow, the staff, and then the wand. And that's going to represent all 7 basic weapon types in Throne and Liberty. At this point, the tutorial also wants you to review your skills. It'll mention that defensive skill, your active skills, your passives, and then your quick slots. Now, this is going to look a little bit different depending on whether you're playing on console or PC. Here's how it looks on keyboard and mouse for PC. And then here's how it looks different for console. But basically, at this point, all you'll have to choose from is your defensive skill for either your main weapon or your offhand weapon. And then 4 active skills for each of those. So in this case, I have 4 skills for the greatsword and 4 skills for the longbow, and then you can put these anywhere on your quick slots. So that looks good. We're good to go, and we can go ahead and practice on the dummy. So you'll want to select one of these as your main target. You can see the cursor is going to highlight this practice dummy. We can start our auto attack with either the right bumper on the controller or right mouse click. And this again is our basic auto attack. Doesn't do a lot of damage. It will increase, though, obviously, depending on your weapon. And here's where you can start using those skills. So the cool thing about Throne and Liberty, one of the things that I like, is that you can use any skill at any time, as long as it's off cooldown, no matter which weapon you're currently using. You can see I'm using my longbow right now, but I could go right into my greatsword ability, Precision Dash, and use that at the same time. So that's kind of a fun little thing that you can do in this game. You can see my ability has a cooldown of about 20 seconds, and I won't be able to use that skill again until the cooldown resets, basically. So I definitely recommend at this time you take a few minutes and just work on, some different combos, whatever 2 weapons you chose. For example, if you're a ranged, class, if you pick the bow, you're going to have these different ranged abilities. Some of those are really powerful. If you're a melee fighter with greatsword or sword and shield or daggers, you're going to want to get in close and then use those melee abilities. Keep in mind, too, you can stop your auto attack basically with escape in case you want to stop attacking the target completely. You can do that on controller as well. But go ahead after you've practiced a little bit and continue with Lottie's quest here. There's another sprinting section here where you can use your morph. And this is your first introduction to the piton and grappling hook. Basically, this is a fun little grappling mechanic that's going to let you traverse to some higher areas in-game. This does actually get used quite a bit, whether it's in the open world, whether it's in dungeons. You will be using this quite frequently. You can sprint under low passes like that as well. And here you'll get your first bit of real combat, though I don't think you could actually die. Just keep practicing those abilities and playing with different combo effects that you can have. Around this time, you should meet your Amotoi, which is like a little companion that can follow you around, give you some heals over time, some different passive bonuses, and we'll get more into what these little guys do in just a few minutes. But speaking of them, we'll unlock the Eagle morph for you, and this is basically the flying morph. So you jump off the cliff, use the ability, and then you unlock your Eagle. The controls are pretty basic, and it is based on stamina, but you can do things like ascend, so you can go higher. But again, that's limited on your total stamina pool. And then you can also go straight down like this if you want to land really quickly. Final boss encounter here is really nothing to worry about. It's a good time to practice your dodge and your perfect dodge, as well, again, as those different weapon combos. If you don't dodge in time, you'll just get stunned for a few seconds, but you should be totally fine in this encounter. Once you get the boss's health low enough, you'll trigger a cutscene to move on to the next part of the tutorial. After the main tutorial, it's going to bring you to your first town of the game called Castleton. Now, there's a lot that we can do here right away, but one of the first things you should do is unlock your way shrine or your waypoint, and that's shown by this glowing purple beacon. But now, every time you unlock one of these, it's going to give you this really nice sort of overview of the area, also tell you a little bit of background if you're interested. So if you are curious about, the lore of the game world, then I definitely recommend you let this play through and check it out. So now that we've unlocked the region, you can see that it should show up on my map. You can see a little bit more, and then I'll be able to fast travel back to this waypoint anytime I want. Now, at the beginning of the game, first few levels, it is free. Later on, after the first few levels, it will actually cost, so just keep that in mind. But next, I recommend that you explore your first town. A couple things that you want to keep an eye out for are these papers. There is a collection system in the game. There's several collection systems, but by collecting all the papers, you can get some progress for your character. And that's the type of currency that you can use in the in-game shop to get some different consumables, random bags, and things like that, which we'll go over a little bit later as well. So there's tons of merchants in town. Unfortunately, we don't really have any currencies that we can use at this point. So I'll be coming back to these later in the video to show you exactly what you can do with each one. For now, I just recommend you continue the main story. And to do that, you're going to just follow, again, that main purple star marker. Now, once you pick up the main story, it's going to unlock something really important called the Codex. Okay, so the Codex you can find in the middle top area of your main menu. And there's 3 different codexes, actually. There's Adventure Codex. This is your main story. So it's going to tell you exactly the steps that you've done in the past, and then also tell you basically what to do in the future so you can follow along with each chapter and each step along the way. You can see, actually, I have a reward that's waiting in the Adventure Codex. And so basically every chapter that you complete, either an adventure or exploration, will give you some type of reward. And you can see that all the way at the end. So claim final rewards. And then you can see I have 3 different hat options I can choose. You can see all of these have the same sort of defensive stats, but they also have a different trait. You have melee hit chance for this one. You have ranged hit chance, so if you're a bow or a staff user, and then you have max mana on this one. I'm going to go with the ranged hit chance. Now, there is also an exploration codex. So if we go over to the middle section, each exploration area other than towns is going to have a set of side quests or objectives that you can do at any time in the exploration codex as soon as you unlock that waypoint for that region. And then finally, collections. This is where you can see your collection of papers and books. Some of them we've already picked up in town. You can reread these as well if you want. So as you level up, a big thing that you can do in Throne and Liberty, of course, is apply your stat points, which are essentially attributes, which if you're familiar with any MMO or RPG, this is similar, just a bit simplified actually. So you can see I've gained 1 level, so I have 1 stat point I can invest in either strength, dexterity, wisdom, or perception. Now, as you go over each of the stat, it's going to tell you sort of generally what it does. Notice that you do start at 10 of each stat as well. So strength serves as the source of physical prowess, so it's going to provide defense in addition to increasing max health, health regen, max damage, and minimum damage. Dexterity is your source of nimbleness, so that's going to increase quickness and critical attacks in addition to evasion and max damage. Wisdom is a source of mental prowess, so it's going to increase max mana, mana regen, in addition to cooldown abilities and maximum damage. And then precision is the source of insight and awareness, heightens awareness during battle. It increases the accuracy of your attacks, your CC or crowd control effects, enhances time-boosted abilities, and increases max damage and minimum damage. Also note that underneath the description are different achievement effects. And so as you reach these different benchmarks, you're going to get some passive bonuses. For example, at 30 strength, you get an additional 750 max health. At 30 wisdom, you get an additional 750 maximum mana. Those are important to keep in mind. Also, the scaling here, just as a side, from 10 points all the way up to 30 points, it's going to have basic scaling. So basically 1 point is going to give you 1 point of progression. But after you hit level 30 strength to 31 strength, for example, that'll actually cost you 2 stat points. Now you can get stat points on gear as well, especially the, purple, more advanced gear. Sometimes you can get a lot of stats from those. But in the beginning, that change from, 1 stat point per effect to 2 is a big deal. And so you really want to just stop adding points at 30 until you get some gear that gives you stat bonuses as well, and then you can change things up. Now, if you do put a point in here before you apply it, it's going to give you exactly the increase that you're going to get. So that's another way that you can review. So you can see 1 point in strength specifically is going to give me about 1 base damage. It's going to give me an extra 5 melee defense, an extra 5 range defense, about 45 max health, and about 3 extra health regen. So that's specifically what that point would do. And you can do the same thing over dexterity, wisdom, and perception. And this is going to be more helpful when you're resetting stats. If you want to dump like 10 points into strength and you want to see what it does, you'll get exactly the specific increases here, which is kind of nice. But for now, I'm going to just put a point into strength. Now, the advantage of strength, especially for beginners, playing by yourself a lot, is it's the only stat that's going to give you max health and health regen, which are your survivability stats. So if you're not sure what your build is, strength is a really good place to start. And you can also reset these stats at any time, so don't worry about it. Now, in terms of gear, we already saw, I have the 7 basic weapons. I have those equipped already. My longbow is the main weapon. My greatsword is my offhand or my support weapon. I do have some gear, some armor pieces equipped too, like some basic robes and stuff. This is just, the basic default starting gear, but I do have that new hat, so I'll go ahead and equip this as well. It's going to give me that extra melee and range defense, plus the extra hit chance from range. So that's nice for our first item. A couple other things about this screen. You can get your detailed stats this way. And so there's a lot to look at here. If you're into min-maxing your character, you'll definitely want to get familiar with the full stat sheet. You can tap through these different chances for damage, boosts and bonus effects, damage types against bosses, PvP effects, experience bonuses, and so on. All of those are here. Now, if you don't like how the hat looks, there is actually a hide option for head armor. So you can do that with any type of helmet you want. Some helmets in this game don't show your face. I know some people that you spent so much time on your character, you want to show the face, right? So that would be how you do that. Now, in the bottom left is a very important stat. It's not important yet, but it will be important later. And this is your gear score. So you can see my gear score currently is 248, which is really, really low because I don't really have much. And you can see how unequipping and equipping items affects that. So let me unequip the hat. It's going to go down by 20 points, right? And if I equip the hat, it's back up 20 more points. Now, this obviously depends on the rarity of your item. So once you start getting green and blue and purple quality, this is going to increase quite a bit. Now, the reason why this is important is some dungeons are gear score locked. So you won't be able to start or queue for these co-op dungeons unless you have like 1,000 gear score or 1,600 gear score. So like I said, it's really not important in the early game. You don't have to worry about it. But if you are interested in doing the co-op dungeons, you will need to be able to pass those gear score benchmarks. One more feature that I really like about Throne and Liberty, as you can see in the inventory screen, is you do have equipment loadouts, and you have up to 3. So this affects both your stats and your equipment. And there is also a loadout for skills, which we'll get to in a little bit. So basically, my loadout number 1 is what I'm currently using. If I swap to equipment and stats set 2, I'm basically not using anything. And so this would be, if I wanted to, create a completely different build, like say this was my DPS focused build for group content, and then maybe I want to do more of a solo questing type build, I could use completely different, gear sets here. I could use different weapons. Maybe I want to use greatsword and, wand or something like that. This is then my build number 2. So it's really easy to switch between these. You don't have to unequip things and re-equip things. You can save these 3 different slots. And like I said, there's an option for skills as well, which is really good. Okay, so once you progress a little bit in the main story, you'll go ahead and unlock your next area on the map, which is called Golden Rye Pastures. Once you get here and unlock the waypoint for fast travel, you'll get your first opportunity to do a side mission or a side quest, or what the game calls an appendix. You can see these do have icons, different icons on the map. This is sort of a smaller, darker purple icon compared to the bigger, brighter main story quest icon. So that's a way that you can keep track of those. This will also show up in the actual game. So here is my side mission or my appendix, and then my main story objective is off in the distance there. Now, the other way that you can keep track of these is, again, through the Adventure Codex. Remember, the Adventure Codex is our main story. So if we go to Chapter 1, we can see as soon as we got to this point in the story, it unlocked that appendix mission or that side quest right here. And you can also see that it's going to give us some experience, some currency, as well as some upgrade materials. So it is actually really good to do these side missions or appendix missions because you do get rewarded for doing them. Now, you don't have to do them. You can completely skip them, and you can just choose to progress in the main story, and that will get you, through the main story quest faster. So it is up to you, but I do recommend you do some of them, and keep in mind you can't look ahead of time and see if the rewards are actually, if you think they're worth your time or not. Basically, that's listed in the Codex. The other way that you can level up, gain experience, and gain more rewards is that now that we've unlocked this new region, Golden Rye Pastures, we're going to have some additional quests or objectives that we can do in the Exploration Codex. Remember, we talked about that before. Now, the first one called Cursed Rain, this is not going to unlock until the next step in the Adventure Codex or the main story quest, but I could do this next one, Once Peaceful Rye Fields Exploration. So these are pretty cool, and a lot of players miss this. These are really specific objectives. So in this case, I just need to get an extra Codex page. I need to ignite a pile of straw. I need to destroy one malfunctioning harvester, which is like a basic enemy in this area. Each of those steps along the way in the Exploration Codex is going to give me a reward. So this one gives me magic powder, some experience, some gold. I'll get world tree leaves and more magic powder. And then the really cool thing is that once I complete both of the objectives here, the side missions basically, Cursed Rain and Once Peaceful Rye Fields, I'll get a final reward. And this is really nice. Especially for early game, you're going to get 10 of these food items. So again, just like the appendix or the side missions, not every single one of these exploration codexes is going to be worth the time. But I do recommend, as soon as you go to a new area, check these out, see what the rewards are, and that way you can start thinking about which of these side objectives you want to complete. Last note about this is you do want to basically favorite these if you are doing them. That way they'll show some of the objectives on your map. So to start this one, the Once Peaceful Rye Fields, I'm just going to add it to my favorites. You can see the star appears right there. And then once I'm in the game, you can see I have now the objective showing up on my map. I can also track it in my notifications. And these are sortable, by the way, which is nice. So here's my main story and appendix missions. And then here's my codex missions right here in blue. But once you complete that exploration codex, I've done both now, we can pick a final reward, which is going to be 10 food items. Now you'll notice that these give you different stats. This gives me defense. I have PvP stats here, hit chance and critical hit chance against bosses, and then all hit chance, all critical hit chance. So this one, the green quality one, is definitely better, I think, in terms of stats, but also duration. You need to pay attention to that as well. So these gray or white quality items only have a 15-minute duration for the food buff. You still get 10 of these, so that's not bad. But green quality gives you twice the duration, so 30 minutes. So this is definitely the best choice early on. Now, with your food and with your consumables, we do have a sortable inventory in Throne and Liberty, so you can see all of your consumables together in one tab. Now, you can use these just from the inventory. If I use it here, that's going to give me that buff. But the better thing I think you should do is add these consumable items to your quick slots. So if we go add to quick slot, I can put this in my first slot. Then you probably have some potions as well. Recovery crystals are essentially your health potion. You want to add this to a slot also. Then you have mana potions. This increases your mana regen. Add this to a slot as well. for mana recovery. And then you also have different quick remedies. These are very short lasting buffs, 15 seconds. So this would be more like for an emergency. So attack remedy increases your damage dealt by 20%. And then defensive remedy that reduces your damage taken by 20%. I'm going to do the attack remedy. But you could also do both remedies at the same time if you want, and just leave your food sort of in your main inventory. Now, if you want to get more consumables than what you've picked up so far, that's where you're going to head to the Sundries Merchant in any town in Throne and Liberty. Here you can see we have more health recovery, so recovery crystals, basically a health potion. But two other really interesting consumables you'll want to keep stacked in your inventory. World Tree Leaf. Remember, this is what your Amotoi uses to heal you. Now, especially when you're playing solo and early on, it's easy to run out of this, honestly, very quickly. So you'll want to come back to town anytime you're here in town. Go ahead and restock this because it is really cheap. You can increase the quantity that you buy and just buy like 100 at a time if you want. The other consumable you can buy here is called Stellarite, and this increases your weapon damage by 10%. So it's going to, affect your overall skills, letting you perform better in combat. Now, it does seem a little bit expensive this early in the game, but eventually you'll have, millions of gold or solent in your inventory, and you can just buy these whenever you want. So I don't recommend buying it right away, but once you get into the mid or late game, this is definitely an option to, increase your damage passively when you have enough gold. So for now, I'm just going to purchase that World Tree Leaf and exit. But let's go back and talk about inventory a little bit more. Remember that you do have different tabs. So you have your general tab, you have basically gear, so weapons and armor, you have consumables, you have upgrade materials, crafting materials, and then chests or boxes, basically items that you can open to get multiples of other items in your last tab here. Now, there is no weight stat in Throne and Liberty, so basically your inventory is just based on your max number of slots. When you start the game, that'll be 130 slots for your basic inventory. You have storage as well. We'll talk about that in a second. These slots should be more than enough, especially if you're using storage to last you to, mid to late game in Throne and Liberty. But whenever you're ready, you can expand on your slots as well. That's down in the lower right. These upgrade by 5 slots at a time. 250,000 solent is the first cost. So again, I know this sounds like a lot early on, but once you get to like level 20, 30, this is literally nothing. You'll see. So this is a good option later on. And just a note for PC players, the UI here is slightly different. I wanted to point that out, where your expand button is actually this plus sign right here next to your max inventory number. Okay, let's talk about storage next. You should have talked to the storage manager early on in the main story. Storage is basically, your bank where you can store some of the items that you're not going to be using to save on your active inventory slots. So for example, let's say I know my build already. I'm going with the Greatsword, Bow, Ranger style build, and I'm just going to put these in my storage for later in case I want to change up my build. So that's going to save me 4 active slots. Just like with inventory as well, you can expand your storage. You can see you start with 20 slots. This is a lot cheaper to expand, 5,000 solent to start with, and that's going to give you 5 additional slots as well. Now, there are some options for a quick deposit, and the way quick deposit works is it basically, you can sort of organize or filter and deposit certain types of items all at once. Let's say that I wanted to set up a rule basically where I can auto deposit all of my gray quality weapons and armor, right? So I can go to quick deposit settings, can go to the grade and just select common. I can go to the equipment section and say I want all weapons and armor and accessories. Consumables, I probably don't want to automatically deposit those. You want those in your inventory so you can use them. So just to kind of make it easy, I just want to basically deposit all my gear. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply that rule. And then when I hit the quick deposit button, there we go. It just deposited all the common quality weapons and armor. So you can set up those rules how you want. It's a quick deposit option. The next thing we want to talk about is Amotoi Expeditions, and you can get started by talking to Adventurer Pro Percy in Castleton. You'll unlock this as you progress through the main story. You can start interacting more with your Amotois. This unlocks the Amotoi House. A couple ways you can access this I've found on console. Probably the easiest way is to use your quick menu here, Amotoi House. You can teleport there directly. For mouse and keyboard UI, you'll have your picture of your Amotoi just here above your skill bar. You can click on that guy. Once you're in your Amotoi house, you can set up the expedition here at the map. So this is where you can send your Amotois on expeditions to different regions across the world and have them collect resources and crafting materials for you, basically. Now, the way that these different regions unlocks, it's not linked to your waypoints and what you've actually gone to in the game. These unlock based on your expedition team level. So basically, the more that you level these up, the more regions you have access to, and the more advanced materials you can collect. So starting in our first location, Golden Rye Pastures, we can set up an expedition here with any of our current Amotois. And the main thing that you want to do here when you're picking your team, basically, is you want to match the type of Amotoi to the region. So Golden Rye Pastures is part of the Plains type of region, and so any Amotoi that has that same symbol, like the crane above their head, you're going to want to pick them for this expedition because they'll be able to collect more resources because they're the same type. You can see this little guy has given me about 4 threads and 4 wood, and then if I were to switch to a non-Plains type, I'm going to get less. I'm only going to get up to 3 of each. So you do want to keep that in mind. That's the main thing. You can also look for the green arrow. It makes it really obvious which type matches which region. Now, the other thing you can do here is change the expedition time. So the longer that you send them out, you can see the more materials potentially they can get, all the way up to 8 hours. And in fact, the 8-hour ones are going to get some better rarities. So you're going to get more uncommon materials at 8 hours versus 4 hours. So just set your timer there. You got your Amotoi selected, and then you can begin expedition. And then your timer counts down from there. This is actual real world time. It's not time in game. So, you can do this before you log off, come back in the next day, and your expedition should be complete. Now, it's good to complete this early, like I said, because you'll get a lot of resources, which you can use for crafting, cooking especially. But this also will give you access to the fishing rod, so you can start the fishing skill as well. So speaking of resources that you might need for crafting, you can get these out in the open world as well from various nodes. We have star trees, for example, which you can chop down. These can give you wood or even bait for fishing. Another example is the wild herbs. That's going to give you some components for cooking. You can also get a lot of crafting components from killing enemies, though the drop rates on those are very, very low. So I don't recommend spending a ton of time to get materials from enemies. If you're curious about what specific enemies have in the region where you are currently, you can simply open up your map, open up your region, and then you can check each enemy in the Monster Info tab. It'll give you their level as well as the potential items that they'll drop. So we can see harvesters can potentially drop mistwood and even rye. But again, these are very low drop chances. Now, if you're looking for resources, make sure you use your map. It's going to be very easy to see what's in your local area just by popping that open. You can find these in your mini map as well. Now, occasionally you'll find bosses out in the open world as well. You can see those by the orange icon. These are going to be more challenging with the potential for better loot drops. Sometimes these will give you quest rewards, either for appendixes or exploration quests. And these do spawn randomly. So if you do see one appear on your map, it's good to try to defeat them because you may not see them again for quite a while. And then one thing you can use if you need to heal up or recover your mana quickly is a campfire. And you can find these all over the open world map as well. It has the campfire icon. You can even find these in dungeons as well. So when you sit down, you do heal and recover mana a lot faster. You can even access cooking from here, so you don't have to cook from the main town necessarily. You can do this anywhere that you have the bonfire. So fishing in Throne and Liberty is a bit different than you might think it actually works. Remember, you can get your first fishing pole from that Amotoi quest in Castleton. You can get the bait from either harvesting worms from trees. You could also get those from the shop with the ornate coins. And once you have your rod and your bait equipped from the inventory, the basic idea here is to find a body of water, cast your line into it. You can see the eligible areas by the blue dot here. And the way that this works is you're not really trying to reel the fish in. What you're trying to do is just to sort of wait out the fish long enough that it doesn't break your reel and it loses its stamina. So you can see the stamina meter for the fish is on the left. Your stamina for pulling in either direction is on the right. And so basically your goal is to just keep the fish in the middle as much as possible until you wear it out and its stamina runs out. And then you're just going to yank it all the way into you, basically. So in other words, once you get the fish on your line, the direction that it's going, you need to start pulling in the opposite direction as soon as possible and try to get it back into the center. Otherwise, your line is going to break. Once it starts moving in the other direction, you'll probably have to switch the direction of your pulling to make it go back the other way. And again, you just want to keep it close to the middle if you can, so the line doesn't break. And if you do this for long enough, the fish's stamina goes all the way down, you've got yourself a fish. So it is pretty easy, but it does take a little bit of getting used to. Now, different types of bait are going to be better for different sizes and types of fish, and all of these can be used for cooking, like we showcased earlier. Okay, back to cooking now. You'll also be able to find a cooking oven in most of the major towns in this game. Now, as you progress through the cooking skill, you'll be able to unlock better recipes as you move down the list, but you will have a few options here just to start. Now, a lot of these recipes early on especially do require salt. That's why it's a good idea to do those Amotoi Expeditions that we talked about earlier. You can pick up plenty of that. And then some of the other items like vegetable oil, for example, you can actually buy these from the sundries vendor. So here I can buy eggs, onions, vegetable oil, milk, rye. A lot of those different ingredients that I needed to actually craft the food I can get right here. Also notice that some of these do have daily limits, like you can only get 10 eggs a day. So keep that in mind as well. But I'm just going to get a few different things here. But now that I have my groceries, basically, I'll be able to craft quite a few different recipes. You could do the fried egg. You can do the vegetable stir fry. So in the middle of the screen here, you'll be able to see what the actual benefits are of using this food, as well as how much experience you can get by crafting it. Basically, the more difficult or higher level the recipe is, the more experience it's going to give you. So it's going to be easier to level these up, obviously. If you're cooking the more difficult recipe, and some of these even use the fish that we were able to get earlier. So this looks like a good option to start with. So we'll go ahead and craft this. But if you ever forget what your effects or passive bonuses are doing for your actual character, well, you can see those benefits, those stats at any time. You can do this by going to your quick menu and then selecting effect details. And here you're going to see the full list of all of your active buffs, including any environmental effects. Now, speaking of the environment, you actually do need to pay attention to the weather in Throne and Liberty and even the time of day. More on this later. Now, one thing to pay attention to, though, is if it's raining or not, because there is a unique status effect that happens during the rain in this game where players and even monsters can get the wet status effect, and this is going to interact with some specific skills. For example, in the staff skill line, the ability called Chain Lightning can spread to nearby enemies that also have that wet status effect. But there is also a skill here called Inner Peace, which doubles your mana regeneration when the player is wet. Now, obviously, the rain in the environment is your big clue for when this wet status effect is active, but those abilities that are affected by wet are also going to animate on your skill bar as well. So you can easily, visually check when those skills have bonus weather effects as well. Now, there's actually another pretty cool interaction with wind effects in this game, but this is going to specifically affect longbow and crossbow users. In this case, when you have those weapons equipped, you'll notice a bright arrow on the ground, which is telling you the direction that the wind is blowing. And if you attack with either the longbow or the crossbow in this direction, you'll do some bonus damage. On the other hand, if you try to attack in the opposite direction or against the wind, your damage will slightly reduce. Now again, this is not a huge bonus, and obviously it doesn't work in a lot of PvE content, which is inside of dungeons, but it's just a fun little interaction to be aware of. But another even bigger thing to pay attention to in Throne and Liberty is the time of day. Now, this is especially true if you're out farming in one of the game's world or public dungeons, because as soon as nighttime hits, the doors actually lock and it becomes an open PvP zone. Now, the first time that this happened to me, I didn't even realize what was happening. I just got killed super fast by a group of players. So if you like PvP, definitely check this out. You can prepare yourself ahead of time, and it can be a fun challenge. But if you're just there to, get some levels, maybe some extra materials, you want to leave as soon as nightfall happens before you get zerged down. All right, let's talk briefly about morphs. So Throne and Liberty is pretty different from other MMOs where you'll have mounts typically to, move faster across the landscape. Throne and Liberty does not have mounts. It has morphs, which basically transforms your character into, an animal for different types of movement. You have the dash morph, which would be similar to like your running mount in other games. You have glide, which is really fun. This is a flying morph. So you can just jump off, a tall mountain and you can glide to wherever you need to get to. And then you even have a swimming morph, so you'll be able to swim a little bit faster with these guys. And you can get these through a variety of means. Some come with pre-orders, some are available in the shop, like we talked about previously. And some of these you can just get through gameplay. Like, for example, this ruffled diatrema. I just got this through playing the game, so I didn't have to purchase this or anything. Basically, you can see whatever you've collected here in this menu, and then you can set your active morphs here. Now, there's even special morphs. You have play morphs and shapeshift. And the shapeshift especially is going to come into play for certain quests where you'll need to, shapeshift into an animal or a creature to get by certain quests. But keep in mind, this is where you can unlock that in the menu. And then you can even instantly morph here in the menu as well. Just like that. Or if you're on console, you can also shapeshift through the quick menu option right here. And we also have guardians, and this is going to play a big part into customizing your build even further. You can think of guardians in Throne and Liberty a bit like ultimate skills. They have a very long cooldown, about 10 minutes or so, but they do give you very strong abilities during the few seconds that they're active. The first one you get here, Vampire Slayer. You'll actually unlock this in the main story, probably around like level 25, I want to say. This one increases your defense and also restores your health. So it's very helpful for getting out of, challenging combat, tricky situations. Now, many more of these are just unlocked through side quests and through the Exploration Codex. So you'll want to look around, look through your codex to see where these are, and if any are interesting to you, go ahead and unlock those. Okay, but now we can start talking about some of the combat basics, starting with our basic auto attack. Now, to get started with this, you'll need to select a target first, then initiate combat, and whatever weapon that you have as your main weapon out currently, that's what you're going to auto attack with. You can see I have my greatsword here, and the game actually had me run up to the target to engage with them since it is a melee weapon. Now, if I decide to change my primary equipped weapon, if I change to the longbow in this case, once I initiate my auto attack, you can see now I am doing those basic attacks from range. And I can actually change weapons mid-combat if I want to change to the greatsword, which might make a little bit more sense for melee combat. I can do that as well. Now, the interesting thing about, which weapon you have active in Throne and Liberty, and one of the reasons why I do like combat in this game, is that you can use any skill from either weapon, no matter which weapon you happen to be using at that time. So for example, I can use my arrow and snaring arrow ability while I have my greatsword equipped. If I want to do the reverse, I can take out my longbow, start firing that off, and then immediately use a greatsword ability, like my precision dash. And then I can go right into all of those greatsword skills, even while I have the longbow equipped. So I think that's kind of nice. It makes the combat flow really nicely also, because you can just seamlessly transition from one skill to the next. All right, the other thing about combat that you need to be aware of is different enemy types, and this is designated by the color of their name and their health bar. So enemies that have yellow text for their name, yellow health bar, these are non-aggressive, and so you can come right up to them. They will not attack you. But enemies that have the orange-colored name or health bar, these are aggressive. And so you'll see when they are engaged, they get the little exclamation mark above their name, and that's how you know that you've started combat with that enemy. Now, you can, of course, lock on to different enemies as you need to. So if I need to switch over a target in the middle of combat, I can do that. I can pull multiple enemies at once. So it is a pretty fluid system. Now, the other really important aspect about combat is your defensive skill. getting perfect parries and perfect blocks and perfect dodges, that's when that purple sort of circle is going to appear. That's how you know an enemy is executing their fury attack. And you want to use your defensive skill timed as best as you can to avoid that damage. So there you can see I got a perfect parry with the greatsword. I'm able to do additional damage because of that. If you don't block it, what will typically happen is you'll either take a lot of damage or you'll get stunned. Again, it depends on the enemy and the mechanics. There you saw I took a big chunk of damage. Sometimes you can even stun an enemy before they actually get a chance to deal that fury attack. So having a stun in your offensive kit is really helpful in this game as well. Okay, so how do we set up our skills to be successful in Throne and Liberty? Well, the loadout here is very different depending on if you're playing on PC with keyboard and mouse or console, with a controller. I typically play with a controller on PC, so I've tried both options. What I like to do is I try to organize or I try to group things together by weapon. So I'll try to have like my greatsword abilities grouped together on one part of my skills. I'll try to have my bow skills together on another part. On mouse and keyboard, you can do this as well. You could have 1 through 5 be like your greatsword abilities and 6 through 10 be, your longbow skills, something like that. But the first thing you want to start thinking about is your defensive skill. And again, you're going to have one defensive skill per weapon that you can choose from. In this case, I have Overtaker from the longbow and I have Iron Point Parry from the greatsword. And one of these I can choose to be my main defensive option. As you just saw, I'm using the parry skill. That's going to deal damage back if I do, defend that purple circle fury attack with the right timing. Some of these are different, like the Sword and Shield, for example, actually heals you back when you defend a fury attack. Other skills are more like evasions, like they'll help you dodge. So this really depends on your weapon choices and then how you want to play your build. Now, as you progress, as you gain levels in Throne and Liberty, you're going to unlock more skills, and then you can start placing these on your skill bar. So, for example, I have Nature's Blessing now. I think I got this around level 12. I can drag this onto my skills, and now I can use that ability. Now, keep in mind to unlock these skills, the levels here, like level 15 for Brutal Arrow, level 18 for Arrow Vortex, these are not weapon levels, these are actually your character level. So I've been using Greatsword and Longbow for the entire time on this character, but if I were to switch those weapons, if I were to equip something else like a wand, when I go to my wand skills, I can still use up to my first 5 because this is my character level, right? It's not my weapon level. There is weapon mastery levels, which we'll talk about in a minute, but that's a totally different thing. Now, in terms of what skills actually do, the main things you need to look for is the cooldown and the resource cost. Unlike some games like The Elder Scrolls Online, which uses stamina and magic, basically every ability in Throne and Liberty is going to cost mana, and that is your resource, your main resource for using abilities. But every ability also has a cooldown. You can see my main bow ability here, Zephyr's Knock. This has a 6-second cooldown. So once I use it, I'm going to have to wait 6 seconds before I can use it again. The other thing you want to look at here is either the damage or the healing component of the skill. Usually that's based on a number, a percentage of your base damage. So you can see here, the amount of damage I do is going to be about 320% of my base damage, plus a little bit extra, 26. But that damage component just comes from, your currently equipped weapon and its quality and any upgrades that you have on it. So after you have your defensive skills and your active skills added to your skill slots, you want to then add some passives. Each weapon has up to 7 different passives that you can choose from, and in your passive skills, you have 8 total. So if you want to do this evenly, you could grab 4 passive skills from the longbow, you could grab 4 passive skills from the greatsword, and then you could slot those here. And more passive skill options are going to unlock as you progress, and more slots as well, again, all the way up to 8 passive skill slots. Just like we talked about with skills, the passives that you choose, you want to read through these carefully and make sure that they're supporting whatever build that you want to do, whether you're playing solo, whether you're focused on increasing DPS, whether you're a healer, whether you're a tank. These should support your playstyle as well. But here you can see a more advanced character, also using the longbow and greatsword, where I've unlocked everything. You can see I have all my skill slots filled out. I've got all my passive skill slots filled out. So this is more what you're going for. But I did want to point out a couple more cool things about this. The skills area is you have quick slots, and this is similar to when we were reviewing the gear sets earlier, where you can basically save different builds. So I have my Ranger build here, Greatsword and Longbow, like I said, in quick slot number 3. I've got a Paladin style build here. This is Greatsword and Wand in quick slot number 2. And then I have like my healer / mage build here. This is Wand and Staff in quick slot number 3. So you can save different builds, and that's really nice because it does take a long time to set up your skills and especially the right passives. The other thing you'll find here is Weapon Mastery, and that is this area here. Weapon Mastery is basically like another progression system where you can level up your weapons. Basically, the more you use a weapon, the more it'll level up. There's different consumables to the Weapon Mastery Do, I think it's called. Gives you weapon experience towards your mastery. And so basically there's 3 different pathways that you can start unlocking some passives and some more beneficial abilities. Like here, Skilled Vitality. This gives me more stun chance with the Greatsword, stun duration, and reduces cooldown speed. So this helps you just refine your build a little bit further, but this does take a very long time to build up. It's one of the slower progression systems in Throne and Liberty, so I wouldn't worry about this right away. But then we also have Skill Specialization. I believe this unlocks at level 15, and this is one of my favorite systems in Throne and Liberty because it just lets you customize your skills a lot more, basically. So, for example, in the Greatsword Specialization, one of the best early abilities you have is called Death Blow. And with Death Blow, you can change it to a charged effect. So it's going to take a little bit longer to cast. It'll give it a casting time. But it also increases the damage by 100%. So it doubles the damage. This is going to be really powerful early on to help increase your DPS. You can also reduce your cooldown. And to do this, you basically have to spend these specialization points. In total, you'll have 100 specialization points once you reach level 50, so you get a few every level. And again, you can spend those on each skill to unlock certain perks. Some of them are simple, with Da Vinci's Courage, which is a heal over time effect. I can increase the duration by 3 seconds. That's pretty basic. But some of them do completely transform the ability. Like with this one, Instant Healing, I can change it from a healing over time or regeneration effect into an instant heal. So that's going to completely change how your build works and how that skill functions. So there's a lot to dive into in this system. I'll just say, once you hit level 15, try to figure out the biggest benefits. Stuff like I said, Death Blow doubles the damage, and you want to focus down on those first while you level up and gain more skill specialization points. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about gear, about skills and passives, let's talk about progression and how you can actually improve your character. Starting with our gear, including weapons, armor, and accessories, basically anything can be upgraded in Throne and Liberty using the enchant system. So, for example, you can go to your inventory, you can select any piece of gear, hit enchant, and you have the opportunity to level up that gear piece using something called growth stones. So this is basically going to level up my weapon, in this case my greatsword, to get from 1 to level 2. That's going to increase my damage as well as max health. So let's do 1 level up attempt here. It's going to cost me 800 gold. And 2 growth stones, and you see that brought me to 35%. So basically once I get all the way past 100%, I will hit the next level for this weapon. Second attempt, I used 2 more growth stones, and that got me up to 70%. And there we go. My third attempt got us all the way to 100% growth. And so we leveled that up from level 1 to level 2. Same thing is true, like I said, about armor, about accessories. And both of these have their own versions of growth stones. You can see this one is called Armor Growth Stone. Functions the exact same way. This time, though, I'm going to check this box here that continues the growth attempts all the way to the next level. And so it'll consume basically however many growth stones it takes to level up. Okay, I got a few more, so I'll go ahead and get to level 3 as well. Now, another option in terms of progressing or upgrading your gear is the transfer system. So instead of leveling up your gear with growth stones, you can actually transfer the level from a lower level weapon, a lower tier weapon, into your higher tier weapon to grow the level of that one. So, for example, let's say that I wanted to level up my staff, which is purple quality, but no levels as of yet. This would take a lot of growth stones to level up. But I do have a lower tier weapon that's already maxed out. My blue greatsword. If I don't want to use that anymore, let's say I'm upgrading to a new build or a better weapon with a better tier, this will transmit those levels, transfer them basically. So it's going to level up my purple staff from 0 all the way up to level 6. Now that does consume the lower tier weapon. The greatsword in this case would disappear, but that's going to actually save quite a bit of time versus how many growth stones it would take you to level up your purple staff to level 6. The other main type of progression that you'll be taking part in Throne of Liberty, obviously you have the gear and the gear upgrades, but then you also have skills and skill upgrades, and how do you progress those? So it is actually a similar system. Any skill, whether it's a defensive skill, active, passive, these can be upgraded as well to the next level and even the next tier. So for example, Zephyr's Knock, I can go to skill growth. You can see a similar system here, but now I'm using growth books. Consuming 1 is going to give me a chance to earn a certain percentage to that next level. So let's try that. So I got 40%, another 40%. This is the special growth. We got about 100% there. And that brought us up to level 2. So what did that do? Well, it depends on the skill, basically. But you can see here with Zephyr's Knock, the upgrades are simply leveling up the damage. The percentage multiplier stays the same, but the static multiplier did increase. And you can see each level up is going to increase something, either the percentage or the static multiplier, or sometimes both. So we can do a few more here just to see how it goes. Now, the difference between progressing your skills or leveling them up and leveling up your gear is that skills can actually level up to the next tier or the next quality. You can see here I'm at level 5, uncommon level 5, which looks like it's the max, but it's really not. If I level it up again, you'll see what happens. You can see it moved up to the next tier. So now this is a rare quality skill, level 1, and the progression just starts over again. And it's going to continue to get stronger and stronger with each level, all the way up to purple quality. And just like with gear, there's different quality growth books in this case that you can use to level those up. Now, how you do this is completely up to you. I do recommend that you focus on leveling up the skills that you use the most and make the most impact. For example, your main DPS skill, the one that you're using all the time to pump out the most damage, level that up to do more damage. If you're a healer, level up your main heal so that you're healing for more. Now, don't forget that you can level up your defense skill as well, and this just takes the same active skill type of growth book. But also, passives can be leveled up as well, and these require a different type of growth book specifically for passive skills. But again, if you're using this passive and you feel like it makes a lot of difference for your build, leveling it up is going to make that even stronger, make your build stronger. Next question is, well, how can you get more armor so you can, use it, equip it, upgrade it? One of the ways you can do it, especially early on, is to craft it. And so you can do that in any main town really is going to have these crafting merchants. We've got the weapons crafter, we've got armor crafter, accessories crafter. So let's say I want to craft some armor. You can see every type of piece can be crafted in different rarities as well. And basically what you're going to need to get started is you're going to need some lithographs, which are essentially blueprints or patterns that let you craft that specific piece. And then the crafting materials. Different kinds exist, so you'll have like steel, different qualities of steel for like plate armor, leather armor, you have rune leather, and then magic powder is also going to be required. Now, as you're leveling, you'll get most of these ingredients that you need simply from completing the main story quest, and you'll get these as rewards. So I do recommend that you basically craft yourself a full set of green armor, or at least the best pieces whenever you can. So let's say that I just want to craft this leather tunic. I've got the lithographs, I've got the materials that I need, so I'll go ahead and select this one. And there you go. Now I can equip that item. I can even, upgrade it using my growth stones if I wanted to. And the same thing is true, like I said, for weapons and accessories. You can find these crafters in every single main town in the game. But if you want to easily get new and more powerful weapons and armor in the next tier, I recommend checking out your Lithograph Book. Now, this is another really helpful mechanic in Throne and Liberty that lets you trade in older gear for new gear. For example, here I can trade in 4 green quality greatswords to get the next tier up of a blue quality greatsword. Now, this isn't something that you can normally craft yourself either. You have to, farm random drops from dungeon bosses or pay for the crafting blueprint. So this method is much easier and more time efficient. All I need to do here is craft the remaining greatswords that I don't have collected yet. Then I'm going to return back to my Lithograph Book, submit all 4 of those items, and then click on Claim Reward, and I'll be able to equip my shiny new piece of gear. Another thing you can craft in Throne and Liberty that you'll need to craft is your skill upgrades, those skill growth books. So like I said, you can get a lot of these from the main story quests and even some of the appendix quests, the exploration codex, but you will at some point need to craft some of these as well because there's lots of skills in this game that you just want to upgrade. So same thing here, you're going to come to the skill researcher, have the correct crafting materials, and you can make your own skill upgrade books that you can then use to improve your skills. All right, so how do you get better equipment, more upgrades so you can improve your character? Well, one way you can do this is through daily contracts. And you'll find these contracts in every town in the game. And basically these will give you little side quests or side objectives that you can complete in the surrounding area to earn some helpful rewards. And what I recommend is because some of these contract people are going to give you contracts for multiple areas, try to select the contracts that all lead you to the same general area so that you can do them faster. In this case, I'm getting all the Pure Light Hill contracts and stacking those. And that way, when I go to do these, all my objectives are going to be grouped together, and I can complete more of them at once and get more rewards. But this is something you can do easily every day. Another type of contract you should definitely be doing is coming to the Sundries Merchant and purchasing these Allied Resistance Forces contracts. And these are not for the Overland, these are instead for the open world dungeons that are part of Throne and Liberty. Basically, you can purchase packs of these every week that give you dungeon contracts for most of the main high-level dungeons in the game. Now, this is mostly an activity reserved for level 50, but it does give you some of the best gear, including blue quality and purple quality weapons and armor. So to start these, you'll just open up the contract. The reward that we want specifically here is the purple quality bag. This is going to give us our random item drop. And the cool thing about these as well, just like regular contracts, is you can refresh them. And so for these, you can refresh the specific objectives of the dungeon contract. What I recommend is that any contract that has as an objective to defeat a boss is you just skip that and you refresh it. Those boss contracts tend to take the most time because bosses can take a while to spawn, sometimes up to 10 to 15 minutes. Even if there's tons of people killing enemies in the dungeon, you're going to have to wait the longest for those. And typically, those are the contracts where you have to kill like 1 specific or 2 specific enemies. Those are the ones that I like to skip. Instead, do the ones where you just have to kill a random number of enemies or collect their items and then interact with some type of object. Those are the easiest and you can do those the fastest. Just like with the Overland contract as well, you'll want to stack these. Make sure you open 3, 4, 5 at a time so that when you're actually in the dungeon and doing the objectives, you're completing as many contracts as possible. Now, like I said, these are level 50, but they still can be done solo. You'll still get credit for these. If you tag the enemies, those will count towards your contract objectives. You won't get any loot and experience though, so keep that in mind. So it is actually better to do these in a group if you can. That way you're also getting the, consumable loot drops. You can even get armor and weapon from these guys, though that is pretty rare. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, but here I got 3 bags already. It only took me maybe 10 minutes, and you can open all of these to get those random drops. Hopefully you get something good. The other thing that you can do in Throne and Liberty to earn some more rewards is going to be world events and world bosses. Now, world events are very simple. You'll find these in pretty much every zone in the game where you have to kill waves of enemies, collect certain items. And these events are open to the public, so generally you're competing with everybody else to see who can collect either the most items or kill the most enemies, and you're going to get better rewards based on how you do. Same thing for the most part with these world bosses. You want to try to do as much damage as possible. Obviously, it's going to be better to group up for this if you can. That's going to give you a better chance of collecting better rewards, but you'll still be rewarded either way, whether you're playing this solo or in a group. I do recommend you check the daily schedule. All of these events, including the world bosses, are actually on a schedule, and you can see here exactly when they'll start, exactly when they'll spawn, where they're located in the world. The one thing you want to watch out for, though, is the PvP events. PvP bosses, these have the conflict tag, so you know that these are going to be PvP specifically. But probably the best way to collect rewards, especially specific gear drops, is going to be the co-op dungeons. These are PvE, so you're going to have a group of 6 players, including yourself, 4 DPS, 1 tank, 1 healer, and you're going to try to make it all the way to the end of the dungeon to defeat the final boss. Now, getting to the final boss is usually pretty quick, maybe 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. You might fight a couple of mini bosses along the way, but generally this is pretty easy. That is until you get to the final boss. Now, what's difficult about the final boss is they generally will have a mechanic or two that you need to learn. If you don't know the mechanic, you're going to just wipe the entire group. So I do recommend you do a bit of research on these, especially the level 50 dungeons before you go into them, so you understand what the mechanics are, or you can talk to your group ahead of time. Also keep in mind you need to have the right gear score or gear level to actually be able to queue for these in the first place. And those are all listed in the party matchmaking system. That's going to be in your main menu as well. So here you can choose a role. Again, 4 DPS, 1 tank, 1 healer is what is allowed to queue for a dungeon. Once you have your role selected, then you can tell it which dungeon to queue up for. I believe these start as early as level 20, and there's several level 50 dungeons. The main thing that matters, though, is not your level necessarily, it's your gear score. Remember when we saw that in the character screen? You'll need to be above the required gear score in order to queue up for that dungeon. We then have the party board system, which can sometimes be better. This is ongoing or current groups that are looking to fill out the group or add another member. So it might say, looking for 1 tank or looking for 1 healer and 1 DPS. These also have gear scores, but they are based on the gear scores of the other players in the group. So these may be a little bit harder to join, but it is another opportunity to get into the group co-op content if you're not having any luck with the queuing system. If you're looking for more of a solo challenge, there are actually 2 sets of secret dungeons. These are solo encounters, including Title's Tower and the Gate of Infinity. And both of these options offer plenty of rewards if your build is strong enough to survive or can deal damage quickly enough. Now, I will say the solo tower is a lot easier, especially as you start out, but you will probably want a build that can focus on survivability and self-healing. If you're interested in this, definitely check out the Paladin build that I posted on this channel a little bit earlier to make progressing through that challenge really easy. But there are even more ways that you can, get lots of rewards in Throne and Liberty just for playing the game and progressing your character. One of those that you'll want to check out, that's the leveling log. Basically, these are level up rewards. Keep in mind that some of these are tied to like the main story quest, but a lot of these are just tied to defeating mini bosses or doing special events like the open world events and world bosses. So there's plenty of rewards to get here other than just leveling up. There's also a bonus pass that you can purchase in the store, which we'll look at in a minute. So you can add that on as well if you're interested. Speaking of which, there is the battle pass as well. This is going to reward you for different activities, either daily, weekly, or always. You can acquire currencies here and use these to unlock more rewards. Usually it's crafting materials and upgrade materials. And again, there are 2 passes here. There's the free one, and then there's an upgraded premium pass that you can choose to purchase if you want to. But even if you don't do that, there'll be plenty of free rewards using the free battle pass. So make sure you keep an eye on this as well and unlock those rewards as you get them in game. Let's talk about the shop here in Throne and Liberty as well. So obviously, Throne and Liberty is a free-to-play MMO, so it's going to have some monetization here in the shop. Things like outfit styles, for example. And with those, you'll need to buy Lucent, which is the paid currency for Throne and Liberty. So you can see here 500 Lucent, about $10 US. So some of these cosmetics are quite expensive. This would be over $20. This is, closer to $25. So I don't personally purchase these, but, if you have some extra money, you might be interested. That leveling pass and that battle pass are about $10 each. So that's something you can keep in mind as well. But other than, paying for the premium currency, there's actually a second currency which you can use in the shop that is free. It's basically a currency that you get by playing the game. Ornate coins is what we talked about. You can get these when you find Codex books just laying around. You'll get 3 coins per book. And I think there's like something like 150 or more books in the game, all in all. And you can spend those to get some pretty, helpful things here. Again, not with real money, but just currency that you earn by playing the game. You can see there's lots of upgrade materials. You can buy those. They'll even sell the Precious Blessing pouch, which is what we get from the dungeon contracts. So if you have just a bunch of extra ornate coins laying around that you've picked up, definitely come to the shop and you can spend those to get some of these upgrades and then potentially even some purple gear from these pouches. Now, if you do have any outfits or if you've hit level 50 and you've gotten those bonus weapon skins, the Mirror Boutique is where you can apply some of those different cosmetic items. If you did pre-order the game, then you'll have some things here already which you can put on. And then this as well is where you can apply those different weapon skins. I love the greatsword. This looks amazing. So yeah, that's where you can apply and update your cosmetics. But hopefully you all found this guide helpful. If you watched all the way through, you're an absolute legend. Thanks for watching. This has been a ton of work to put together. So all I ask, if you got anything from this at all, just hit the like button. Super appreciated. And it lets YouTube know to share this video with other people who might be struggling with this massive, massive game called Throne and Liberty. I do have a few additional guides and builds if you're interested. I'll have links for that below, or you can check out the website. That's hacktheminotaur.com. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying the game. Best of luck to you. And as always, I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.